So let's go through an example of a company that has no strategy versus strategy. So this is pretty clear. So company A has no strategy. Let's just take, for example, a manager comes to your head of marketing and says that they need to be posting more on social media. The marketing head says that they'll see what they can do. And they consider for a moment doing all of this themselves before quickly realizing they don't really have the resources or expertise. Besides, they're already too busy doing everything else. So what do? They look to hire a social media agency or freelance content creator. They spend weeks exploring all these different options, interviewing different people, asking friends, gathering proposals from vendors. And one vendor comes recommended, but the quote's too expensive. So they bargain all the vendors down, playing them off one another. And this keeps the deliverables highest for the lowest price. Now, out of this, a vendor is finally chosen after weeks of communication and internal discussions. Once being hired, the vendor then asks their new client for guidance on what they want. They ask the client to send them things like brand guidelines or whatever strategy they have for guidance. Now, the marketing manager says that they probably don't have them, or they'll try and find a brand design guideline document or something like that, or they'll just give very general guidance in terms of here's what some competitors that or other accounts that we enjoy their social media feeds. So just try and do something similar like that and make it go viral. But the quality and scope of that work fits very far outside the agreement that was just signed. But because the vendor wants to retain their account, they just nod and smile and try and do their best. Now, the content is created by the agency and sent to the client for approval, but the company doesn't really like some of the words that are being used, the imagery. That's not what we would say. We don't do it like that. We can't promise that legally. We would use these words instead of those words, or that image instead of that image, or using the wrong logo there, or make the logo bigger. Lots of back and forth communication is exchanged, which takes weeks and weeks and weeks until anything is approved. Now, once that content calendar is created and approved, it generally consists of watered down versions of perhaps the initial creative strategy that the agency came up with. But time is of the essence, so it's approved and shoved through. Now, the content is then just published over the next few months, and there's very minimal engagement on any of these posts, if anything. Mostly, it's the employees or agency themselves liking and commenting. Maybe a few posts of these are boosted, paid advertising in the background. And these posts get a bit more engagement, and it doesn't look bad. But most of this is low quality bot engagement that sits outside the company's target audience. So at the end of the period, management comes back to the agency and says, hey, look, our sales figures are still the same, or they're down, or they ask the marketing manager for an explanation as to why, because they've just invested lots of money in this social media campaign. Then the marketing manager, in turn, asks their agency for a report showing all the progress. The marketing manager then presents this back to management up the chain, adding a few frills around the outside, showing engagement like metrics, reach, likes, comments, clicks to the website, follows, brand tracking, brand uplift, whatever. And it all sounds very legitimate to management because they don't really know how these platforms work and which metrics are the right ones to pay attention to. So then they just move on to something else. Now, the marketing manager is at this point sometimes blamed or fired for not producing results. And the agency is then in turn sometimes blamed or fired for the same reason. Rinse and repeat, choose a new marketing channel, give that a try, get a new agency, get a new marketer, and around in circles that we go. Now compare this with company B that is using strategy. Again, a manager comes to the head marketing. We need to be posting more on social media. Again, substitute this for any channel or marketing initiative you can think of. The head of marketing then says, okay, let's talk about this because this isn't on our plan for this quarter and it can't be resourced under the constraints of our existing budget. So this falls outside that plan or path that we've already agreed to. At this point, because the marketing manager understands strategy, they're very conscious of the trade-offs and opportunity cost here. But the manager insists that this is very important and they're willing to allocate some more budget or shift some things around because it's a high priority. So the marketer then calls in someone like me to help with this new initiative. And together we ask the manager why this is important. Where did this idea come from? And discuss how this could fit into the strategy that we've already been decided upon. At this point, we're very conscious of all the trade-offs and resources that this new initiative will take up, and it's going to take it away from something else. Now, at the end of this process, let's just say the manager is very insistent Again, they are in a higher authority process, so you can't always say no. At this point, we'll be conscious of the goal and the macro strategy, but then we'll formulate specific objectives for this social media campaign. I'm going to keep the scope of this initiative very tight, deciding to create more like a trial or an experiment out of this with one platform, LinkedIn in this case, instead of trying to cover all our bases like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WeChat, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Reddit, etc. So again, we're going to de-scope this and keep it very focused. We're then going to reference the brand, tone, and voice part of the brand strategy that we've already drafted. And it's been approved up the chain. We're going to take that document and adapt parts of that to arise at a suitable tone for LinkedIn. I'm going to start writing out some examples of what would be in or out of that sort of bucket. And we might include some references from examples that we've already published on the internet or from other accounts that we like to, again, give a practical example of what is in and what is not. The objectives here are going to split between more functional organizational level goals, like comparative visibility on LinkedIn to direct competitors, raw impressions or reach, engagement, etc. But then we're going to translate into a lower level, which is a bit more tactical. And we're going to cover things like we want specific posts to generate sales leads for sales team, for example, or attract talent for HR, or help stories gain visibility for PR opportunities. And again, at this point, we're also going to reference the creative content or messaging strategy that we've already drafted as well. Because again, that's going to provide guidance for us about which lanes we should stay in. And in that document, we have already chosen 3 pillars or buckets of content that we want to focus on. So a short research phase is done by looking at competitor content and similar sectors, but not direct competitors, looking for a bit of inspiration that we can use to create our content. Out of this process, we can then create a content creation brief that's now very robust and detailed to give to a content creator or an agency to add their touch to. We considered a couple of agencies, but then figured out that just because this is a smaller pilot project, the agency contract would be for too long, we're going to source a freelance content creator who could do this work for a 3-month period. With the brief in hand, this freelancer can quickly create an entire 3-month content schedule that's on brand that everybody is happy with out of the gate. Management's very impressed at the quality of the work that's now being posted and published, and there's very little approval issues, so there's less work going back and forth between parties, and it's happening very, very fast. So they can be a bit more responsive to any trends or fashion cycles that are happening on social media, like memes, for example. Everyone is very confident and happy with this initiative. Now, the content's resonating with each of the target audiences that we've already planned for. And the natural engagement is very obvious to everyone looking at any of the posts. Management hears through the grapevine that competitors are even looking at the LinkedIn presence now that we have just created and are admiring it. And HR is getting people inquiring as to whether they're hiring. And a few new customer leads have flowed into sales. All departments are now happy and proud of the company's prowess in this area. It's projecting a clear quality signal to the market. So that's just one quick example of 2 approaches for a company embracing strategy versus not embracing strategy. I'm just one phone call or video conference away. So let's have a chat.